Did you know that most women would rather talk about their own death than talk about their finances? Well, we're here to change that. Welcome to Bixie Speak, where we speak honestly about money and share our personal stories of making it, losing it, and investing it. We focus on real-life situations that affect us, women, living in cities all around the world. From Bangkok to Bangalore, we're out here just trying to live our best lives. But in order to do that, we have got to turn our finances around, from being obstacles to our dreams to becoming opportunities to making our dreams a reality. In each episode of Bixie Speak, we'll tackle a typical life event in the life of an urban woman the world over, and the role that money plays in helping or harming our situations. We'll invite guests to share their experiences from mating and money to marriage and money to fertility in our finances. And we'll share tips, tools, and strategies that have helped us. Nothing is off limits. I'm your host, Rosalie Gitao, CEO of Bixie, a financial platform aimed at helping women take control of their finances and live the life of their dreams. Full disclaimer, Bixie and Bixie Speaks is not a financial advisor and does not provide financial advice. We're an education platform, so you can learn more about us and our community at www.mybixie.com, or go ahead and download the Bixie app on Apple Store or Google Play. Welcome to the wonderful world of Bixie. So, let's get into it. Today, we're tackling mating and money. Dating is hard. We've all been there. We try to ask the right questions. We spend time with one another. We try to get to know each other's friends and families. But for some reason, the one topic that we just can't seem to come up with is money. Which is strange because financial stress is actually the leading cause of divorce. So our guest on this episode today is attorney Vil Gitao, who happens to be my kid sister. Vil is an amazing woman. She's a lawyer, entrepreneur, fashionista, K-pop fangirl, and she's single. She's going to share with you what it's like to date in Manila, one of Asia's largest cities, and what she and her friends have learned. So, Womboy, welcome to the show. So tell us, what is it like dating in Manila?
Well, hi. Thank you for inviting me. I'm not exactly the best person to describe what dating is about because, I don't go on a lot of dates, but I'll try to recall, practical and financial considerations of dating. And I also asked some few friends.
So tell us what it's like dating in Manila.
What is dating like in Manila? It's expensive. So to be honest, it's expensive. But then, how do I put this? Before, men would we had this expectation.
When you say before, are you talking about our grandparents' time?
No, maybe 10 years ago, I don't know. There was this expectation, or maybe during our grandparents' time, there was this expectation that, men foot the bill, they pay for this and that. But, as society grows and even we have this independent women movement, empowered women. Now I think some or even most of us are willing to split the bill, especially when you've been dating for a time. So I think that's the general vibe. That's the general mood of dating. But as I said, it's kind of expensive to date in Manila. So it's very important to have, to consider at the outset, practical and financial considerations, as I've mentioned earlier.
So when people do date in Manila, do they talk about money on date number one?
On day one? I don't think so.
When do you think people start talking about money?
Maybe I think when they've, known each other, personal wants or, dislikes. But
give me a timeline. 1 month, 2 months, 3 months?
Maybe 3 months. Or beyond that.
Or beyond.
Yeah.
How far beyond?
when you think that when people think that that this is going to like a serious relationship, then I think they can discuss about it.
You talk about money before or after you say I love you?
It should be before.
It should be, but what actually happened?
It should be before. I think I've talked about it like before because like
but in general, does it? I know it should be, obviously, because it's one of the key things to know about somebody.
Yeah.
But when is it actually talked about?
To be honest, I think people just start talking about money like I think before the wedding or even after like a wedding has happened. Okay. But I think in my circle of friends, like we're old and I think we dated like pretty old. I think it wasn't a difficult...
Okay, qualify old, because the audience might want to know if you're 105 years old or 28.
No, like 30s, like what Bixie, the target audience of Bixie, which is millennial, urban, working for at least 5 or 7 years now. So I think we're more open to that, talking about money in the earlier stages of dating.
So before the wedding.
Of course, definitely, yeah.
Okay. And in your relationships, when did money come up?
Like I told you, I kind of had a date in like my older years.
Yeah, I remember you started to. I'm putting my sister on blast, by the way. So yes, there was a relationship, and it was in your 30s. And did money ever come up?
Yeah, of course.
How?
Like like simple like budgeting or like I knew from the outset what I can afford and what I cannot afford.
So like when would it come up?
It was early on. What
was the instance? Was it like you wanted to go travel together or what?
Yeah,
what
it was like more of traveling or like buying this and that. So yeah.
Okay. So it was like a birthday was coming up or somebody wanted to travel and then you had to start talking about money. Was it awkward?
No.
Who brought it up?
I think it was me.
How did you bring it up?
No, because I am a salaried person. So I have a budget, like a monthly budget for like everything. And I pay a lot of things, like my usual bills and I pay for my house and my car, etc., etc. So, it's important for me to like budget at the outset because, I have to like have a little savings, a little investment here and there. So yeah, I have to bring this up because I have to like make my salary work and not like lack at the end of like a month.
So if your boyfriend or girlfriend wants to say, "Oh, hey, let's fly to Tokyo next week," you're like, I only have this much money left at the end of that month. That might have to wait till next month. Something like that.
Yeah, yeah. And even when I want to buy something because like I don't punish myself like
you're not an ascetic.
No. But I always leave a portion of my income for something that I want. Let's say, let's say for this month I have like, let's say 5,000 or 10,000 for something I want. If that's exhausted, then I stop. But if it's not, if that could make me fly to Tokyo tomorrow.
Let me qualify. She said 5,000, 10,000 pesos. Okay.
Yeah, pesos, No, that's a lot. But no, it's pesos.
So you allocate a little bit of a treat fund for yourself.
Yes.
And that includes, all manners of just having fun. And if your partner wants to do something that's beyond that treat fund, you're like, no, I can't.
Yeah.
Is this norm? How far along into the relationship do you think about how many months before that came up?
I'm not sure, like 3 months? I don't remember anymore.
Before or after?
You're putting This is too much.
Before or after you met each other's family?
Before.
Okay, before.
Before.
Okay. Would you say that's typical with your friends? The fact that you guys did talk about money, that you openly said, I have a budget, and that you did this before you met friends and family?
I don't think that's typical.
What is typical? What is more typical? Walk me through.
Based on...
And let's not put any of your specific friends on blast because I know all your friends. Let's just make one up called Anna.
I don't even have a name. Do I have a friend? Anyway, Anna. I don't think it's typical to talk about that. Like I mentioned earlier, I've heard a lot of like people, my age, they usually talk about these things like what deep into the relationship. They're engaged to be married and, like wedding preps and all the stuff. And, there's like an entire revolution of like this grand weddings and all. So yeah, I think that's when they start to talk about like, do we have a budget for this? Can we spend like $1 million for like our wedding or like 2 million for my gown?
Pesos.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm a Filipina. I'm very Asian. I'm very Filipino. So I'm talking in pesos. So yeah.
So what I think is really interesting, so I'm no longer single. I've been married now for 7 years, but I got married really late in life. I got married after 35. So I was out there dating. I remember dating and I dated all over the place. I dated in New York. I dated in France. I dated everywhere. And New York dating is infamous. I mean, there have been endless podcasts and shows and whatever written about it. But it's infamous because it's so horrible and so awful. But one of the things I think is really interesting that you're saying is actually exactly the same case in New York. Women in New York, women I knew with MBAs, women who work in finance, they don't bring this up at all. Definitely not before I love you. And usually, as you rightly point out, it's usually around the wedding that these things come up.
Yeah.
And I want to know if this is also the case for you. What I have found with dating, particularly like in New York, dating in London, there was always this need to put up like a facade that everybody is okay. Even if you knew very well that, look, you guys both went to grad school. You both statistically probably have student debt. You both live in an expensive city, like with roommates. So statistically, you probably pay a lot in rent. Your jobs are X. We could go on Glassdoor and figure out how much the salary is. Even though we all knew we were kind of in the same boat, it was really rare. Everybody would put on this front like they didn't have money problems. So, everybody's wearing like the latest fashion, an expensive purse, flying away on holidays. And I remember, because I was very much a New York transplant, and, full disclosure, like I also spent time growing up in the Philippines and growing up in Kenya. And I didn't come from a culture of pretending I had money when I didn't have money. So I thought I assumed either people were really rich. But then when I would get closer to them, I would realize that they were in often a worse financial position than I was, because I didn't even use credit cards, right? So I had a ton of student loan debt, but we were in the same boat in that regard. So I just wonder if that's also the case in Manila, that like the why people don't. So what I'm basically pointing out is like, my observations in cities like New York, in the West, cities like London, is that people didn't talk about money almost to preserve an illusion that they were financially fine. And the only time those became apparent that maybe they weren't was around the wedding planning, because liquidity becomes an issue, right? Like, you can't just be like, oh yeah, I'm fine, and pretend you're fine. It's like, no, the down payment for the venue is due today. Mm-hmm. The bills are coming up. I wonder if the why people in Manila are also not talking about their finances for the wedding. Is it to keep up a front of like keeping up with the Joneses, or is it something else cultural? Like, is it just like, ew, that's a taboo topic? Or, why do you think people aren't talking about it before the wedding?
To be honest, talking about money isn't really like, comfortable.
What do you mean?
I mean, I don't know if it's a Filipino thing or an Asian thing. You don't just go out there and discuss about like, oh, what are you investing about? Or are you saving? Or have you tried this? It's not a normal conversation. I don't know. I was just fortunate maybe because, my connections, like for instance, my office, they have this plan that you can like, invest and all. And there's even like a co-op for, like you can actually like invest in this, you can borrow money for investment, something like that. And even in my church, there's a healthy discussion around, like finances and all. That's why I'm speaking on, coming from that point of view. Mm-hmm. But then generally, it's not something that you would talk about with, oh, how's your finances?
Portfolio?
How's your personal finance? Nobody asked you about that.
Nobody in America either. But then, for me, I think the why is because everyone's putting up an illusion that they're fine. Why is it in Manila not discussed? Is it because like money is a dirty topic? Is it because people don't want people to know what their situation is?
It's not, I don't think it's because, you want to pretend.
Yeah.
But, like wages or salaries in Manila aren't that huge and all. So a lot of people are like, just busy.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
like hustling.
Yeah.
Like hustling out there. I know someone hustling out there to, to make more money. Or, sometimes it's also, like I said, it's cultural. It's not a very welcome topic to, talk about, somebody else's finances or how much is in the bank account or something. But I don't think it's pretending that, I'm so rich and all, I'm so wealthy.
Yeah.
I don't think it's that.
Yeah.
I haven't, in my encounters, I don't know, maybe I know just one person.
Yeah.
But let's not talk about her.
On blast.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And for you, obviously, I think we both agree that talking about money the day you're getting married probably isn't the best time.
No.
When do you think, give me when do you think is the right time? Maybe it's not on the first date, show me a portfolio, but it's certainly not at the wedding. When is the right time to talk about money? When
and
be honest about your financial situation also. Yeah. If you have debt, when is that a good time to talk about it?
Like I mentioned, we're in this age, we're 30s, and I think now when you date with the purpose of getting married or settling down. I think don't prolong it. Don't wait until there's engagement. When after 3 months, 6 months, you're really you're serious about it. It's time to discuss it in the beginning. Not on the first day or second date, but maybe 3-6 months in there, you should start bringing up this conversation because you know what you can afford and cannot afford this year, next year, in the next 2 years, in the next 5 years. If you're paying for mortgage, paying for this and that. So, just to set expectations.
I think that's actually really good. 3 to 6 months, okay? 3 to 6 months, people. If you have not talked about money with your partner, between 3 and 6 months, something is off. I think that's so when I say before I love you, generally I love yous happen within the 3 to 6 month window. So I think what we're saying is, if you can say I love you to somebody and you expect them to say it back, you should be open to being also vulnerable about your financial situation and still expect them to love you, by the way. It shouldn't be oh, I don't love you because of it. You have to love the full person, and that includes their portfolio, right? Whether it's terrible or whether it's good. That's a really good way to think about it. And when do you think is the wrong time to talk about money?
The wrong time to talk about money. Like I said, money isn't an easy topic to talk about, in our culture. We're Filipinos, we're Asians. It's kind of taboo, especially when you're at the table. Oh, we're talking about money. You're eating. You're supposed to enjoy your food. Something like that.
I remember things like that.
Right? Yeah. And we just tend to
I don't even like having money on a table.
Exactly.
Yeah. You're not supposed to have cash.
Or your wallet.
A wallet on the table.
Something like that.
And it still bothers me.
Right?
That is a weird relationship with money. I completely forgot about that, but I don't like it. They're whoa. But that implies that it's dirty.
Maybe, yeah. So you cannot put it on the table.
Yeah, while you're eating.
Yeah. And, we also ignore what we can ignore or just say, politely, maybe we can discuss about it next time. But I think the wrong time to discuss or talk about money is when you're already married. That's the first time you talk about it. I think that's the wrong time because, especially when you're already furious or mad about it.
Yeah.
That's not the best time to talk about it when, problems arise because of money issues.
Yes.
Oh, we cannot pay the down payment for our car.
Yeah.
Or we cannot pay the down payment for our house because, we don't have 20% to use as down payment. So that's not a good time to discuss it.
Yeah. And I think I would also just add that, discussing about finances is not as simple as this is how much money I make. This is how much money I owe.
Yes.
Which is, by the way, critical. You have to say those two things. This is how much money I make. This is how much money I owe. Those are kind of two key terms. But you should also probably be a little bit honest about your spending habits. if you have a Shopee addiction, you need to tell somebody before you get married to them, right? And vice versa. If you know, and if you honestly know, like, I spend too much or I don't spend anything, I'm so cheap, like, these are things that you need to talk about before. So it's not just the when, it's the what. How much do I bring? How much do I owe? And let me be honest about who I am when it comes to how I spend my money. I either spend zero or I'm like, every day is Friday, right?
That's why budgeting is important.
Yeah.
Because, you could allot yourself like a tiny, like, luxury money.
Yeah.
I call it my happy money.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, I want to buy this and, this is nice. I can buy this. So, yeah.
I remember when I was first dating my now husband, when I've dated all of my boyfriends, when it got past the serious point. So I was one of these people, I didn't bring up my finances 3 to 6 months in. Because I was so ashamed. Because yes, to be fair, I earned a lot because I was a lawyer, I worked with you and all that. But I also owed a lot because I had student loans because, we had to put ourselves through school. And I was really embarrassed and really ashamed. So I just didn't want anybody to know about that. So my actual plan was, I'll pay this off before I ever consider getting married because I didn't want anybody else to be burdened. And that's not a life plan, especially when you're talking about debts that are like 20 years that it takes to repay. Like, what are you going to do? Be single until it's paid? Like, that's ridiculous. And so I made a point to really change that with my existing husband while we were dating, not after we were married. And I literally was just like, hey, I have something to tell you. This is my situation. Like, this is how much I have and this is how much I owe. Is that like scary for you? And by the way, I don't expect you to pay it. You're like, this is my plan, but I just I felt like I really needed to share that because it was such a significant amount of money. But I guess what would you say are like effective strategies to raising that issue? Mine felt a lot like a confessional. I was like, okay, sit down, brace yourself. But what would you do? And then really tell me, like, is the effective strategy, is it a phone call? Is it a meeting? Like, actually, you guys have been dating for 4 months, 5 months, and you're like, hey, let's meet for coffee. I want us to talk about money. As opposed to like, oh, let's go on a date where I awkwardly bring up money. Like, maybe we should show up prepared. Like, what is a really, how like every relationship, there's times to do everything. So like, there's the first date and had prepared. There's the third date. There's the date where you meet the friends. There's the date where you meet the family. What if we just made up like a money date? Like, by month 4, there has to be the money date where it's like, okay, now we get to talk about money. and then they leave. Right? 4. And everybody brings their credit card bills and everybody brings it and they're like, there you go. That's my situation. Like, what I actually, now that I think about it, I have to say, I think that might be a really effective strategy. The money date. Anywhere between month 3 and 6, put it in the calendar. What would you say is an effective strategy? What are some that work?
I think I can name 3,
okay.
or maybe steps. First of all, like, it should, no, this is not the top part of the top 3, but I think it should be like face to face.
Okay.
Yeah, because, like, you cannot just text like over Messenger or it could cause a fight, like sometimes, the you have to like see the expressions, like, and we can go out now. It's not like the super COVID era where we just use Zoom or something. But yeah, it should be like face to face. And number 1, I think you have to frame the conversation in an engaging and positive way. Like, it's not like you're prying into it. Oh, how much is in your bank account, or like how much do you, like, not in a threatening situation, because like your relationship is supposedly built on like kindness, trust, confidence. So build the conversation, build the financial conversation around that mindset that, you trust that you and your partner can, work through this. And then, also be honest with your situation. Like, I was conversing to like ladies last time, and yeah, we all agree that we have to be honest. Like, now I know how much I owe.
So now you have to be honest about your K-pop merch addiction.
That's part of my budget. But to be fair, I don't buy anything anymore. It makes me sad sometimes, but fine. But yeah, you have to be honest about, like, what you can, like, you can afford.
Yeah.
Not necessarily like showing your passbook, like, this is my, like, up to the last centavo. But, like, because it could also make the other person uncomfortable as well, because sometimes, especially when women like earn more than men, it's another topic, but like, it could also make them uncomfortable.
Mhm.
But, you know, at least you know what you can afford
Yeah.
today, tomorrow, in the next 2 years, 5 years. And also, maybe your partner can also do that in the same way. Like, you know, what can we afford? And last but not the least,
I like that.
maybe like, create like an action plan.
Yeah.
Like, for instance, you have like mortgages or you have like debts. How do you like try to address it?
Mhm.
And of course, like the number one strategy that I mentioned is you like talk about it in a positive way, not like, you know, in fear, like, oh, are you sure we'll be able to pay like this 5 million peso debt in like 2 years, something like that. But yeah, you have to like create an action plan because, you know, at least from there, you know your standing.
Yeah.
You know your financial standing. And if you owe, let's say you owe still like 5-8 million in like mortgages or whatever debts that you have, you won't be spending a lot on like, you know, like a huge wedding ceremony or something like that. So at least you know your financial standing before like you go further.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think those are really good tips. Number one, do it in person. I love that. also counts for basically everything in a relationship. Do it in person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Number two is frame it positively.
Mm-hmm.
So you're much nicer than me. I was like, everybody bring your bank statements. You're like, no, tell me what I can contribute and let the other person know what they can contribute.
Yeah.
I think that's a much better way of laying down my balance sheet in front of everyone. And sorry, number three was
be honest.
Be honest. Yeah. Be really honest.
Or I actually named 4 actually. Yeah.
Now, to my point though, I think that fourth critical step is, do you think we should, when we call this meeting, because this is this isn't something you just launch on someone, right? Like ostensibly you would want the other person to come prepared.
Mm-hmm.
Do you tell them in advance, like, hey, next Tuesday, let's talk about our finances?
Yeah, I think you can do that.
I think so too.
Yeah,
I think like just shocking somebody all of a sudden would be a bit much.
My friends and I do that. Like, you know, when we want to do something.
Finance Friday.
You know, like my friends discuss it every now and then. Like, not just about finances, but, you know, some things. Like, even at work, like, you don't show up like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't, and I know that sounds kind of unromantic.
Mm-hmm.
Like, we're officially calling a finance meeting, but so much of mating is not the romance. So much of long-term mating isn't just the romance. A lot of it is, but a lot of it is the logistics. And finance is a key pillar of that logistics.
Yeah, because, you know, it also makes, you know, it also keeps peace.
Yes.
in the long run. Yeah.
I absolutely agree. Thank you so much for sharing your perspective on money and mating in Manila. That was really insightful. I love your tips. Thank you for allowing me to pry into your private life. And we really appreciate your tips. And I hope everybody listening today really applies these 4 steps. So, in summation, call a meeting and call a meeting in person within 3 to 6 months. Okay. So that's the logistics of the how. Frame it positively. Here's what I can contribute. Here's what I can afford. And number 3, be honest, guys. Be honest. This is also a great, great exercise in looking yourself honestly in the mirror. I think so much of the reason why people don't talk about finances is they literally don't want to even see their own situation. So I think those are really fantastic tips. Thank you so much for joining.
And last but not least, create an action plan.
Oh, sorry. Last but not least, create an action plan. So we have a 5-step plan. Create an action plan. So if you do come to the table by saying, oh, you know, here's what I earned, but I plan on doing my master's and not earning for 2 years. This is my action plan. Like, make sure you come, or here's all the debt I have, but here's my action plan. Make sure you have an action plan around that. I love it. Wow. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah. I hope it was anonymous. I hope you just like my name.
You can find. So thank you so much for your time. And please join us next time for our next episode of Bixie Speaks, where we will be tackling a topic that is very close to my own heart, and that is fertility and finances. That's a big, big topic, and we are going to bring on somebody who understands it really, really intimately from both sides of that table. So I hope you join us for our next episode, and thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.